That's a reserve area.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Hamilton Planning Board. It's just now 7 o'clock. On our agenda tonight, we have the continued site plan review for 59 and 63 Willow Street. We will be reviewing our open space and farmland preservation development bylaw, discussing potential changes to that. We'll be looking at and potentially voting upon the final housing production plan document. And we also have board business minutes and so forth. So again, on the 59 and 63 Willow Street, I will be recusing myself, as will Rick Mitchell. I'll be handing over chair duties to Dan Ham. So Dan, if you want to start that would be great.
Thanks, Barry. Once again, it's a continuation of the site plan review for 59 to 63 Willow Ave. At this point, I think we've received all the revised plans that conform to what they stated. Do you want to give us a brief update in the last hearing?
Yeah.
Patrick, sorry.
This hearing began, let's see, what was it, on
November 5th?
Yeah, November the 5th. It was advertised prior to that in the Salem News, as well as here in Town Hall. This is site plan review. It is not a special permit. Site plan review is a type of review that it's sort of a special permit light, which the Mass General Law is pretty unique because other states do not have it. It is a type of plan and review that allows projects that have supposed limited impacts to be approved with conditions, but it has to be approved. That's an important point to put forward. Since the last meeting, there have been some changes to the plans. I've sent those around to members. Those plans changed a couple of things. They did add in a turnaround that was discussed at the last meeting, but the fire department wanted to allow their apparatus to move around more easily upon the site. There was also concern relative to the amount of parking on the site, so the applicant has added 4 more spaces, so we now have 30 spaces of parking on the site. Since that last meeting as well, we've done a significant amount of work relative to preparing a decision. You'll see that in your package. We had talked at our last meeting about preparing a decision. I know that there were a couple of items that members had mentioned. We wanted to make sure that there was downlighting. We wanted to make sure that we discussed parking as part of that as well. So within this document, which utilizes the ordinary format for a site plan approval decision, you have a number of items within it. Let's see. One of the things that I felt was important was to make sure that the applicant and the public are aware this is a privately owned and maintained project. This project is required to maintain its utilities over time. It's required to maintain its landscape over time. If the landscape materials die within the first year, they have to replace it. We've also required a maintenance plan for the utilities and equipment that must be updated and made sure that the property and the utilities are working appropriately, erosion control devices, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I know that we've added in here is we've discussed about the septic system, but let's understand that the septic system is the purview of the Board of Health and the health agent. So let me open it up to board members. Have your comments regarding the decision language.
I've reviewed it. I think it's in accordance with what we're looking for.
Okay.
Peter, have you had a chance?
I'm in the middle of it. Looks good so far.
It refers to the plans that we've received, so that's important. It also discusses the Max property as well.
Jill, do you have anything to add at this point, or?
If I may. So the only question I actually had for the board regarding the permit was relative to the affordable units, whether or not the board would like for us to offer a local preference relative thereto. So I didn't know, last time I had done a project in town, we had done that. So would that be something you would like to see? Or is that?
On the behalf of the town, absolutely.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, so that's simple. So that's just the local preference plan. It would be in accordance with what this board typically endorses. So that is just something that the board can condition, and it is included in the decision that Mr. Reffert has reviewed and the board is reviewing. Just a little comment relative to that. And then the only other question I had was with regard to the agreement to limited restriction. I have not heard back from one of the abutters, and I'm not sure if the abutters are going to sign or not sign. So if the board wants to make this part of its decision, I'm never going to be able to record it if I don't get their signatures, other than if I just take the beneficiaries off. So normally I'd put them on to get their consent relative to the agreement, but just so you know, I'm not going to probably be able to get everybody's signature. So what I'm probably going to do is just remove that name and then just file it on behalf of the Hamilton Development Corp. And then this particular agreement will run with the land. I think Ms. Maycock had actually made a statement relative to that, and I had included that language. But again, since I'm not going to be able to get the beneficiaries, I don't have to have them. But
Right.
so I just wanted the board to know that and not be surprised when I had them taken off. It isn't done for any reason other than
Can't find it. Great, thank you.
neutral. Yep.
Another element that I added to is that I have discussed in here the affordable component and all of the filing requirements, all of the paperwork requirements, all of the submissions that have to go to the state are entirely the responsibility of the applicant and not the town.
Right. We talked about it. Yep.
And I am familiar with that process. I've done it a number of times. So what I have to do, just if the board doesn't know, is I go to DHCD and then I get this thing called a regulatory agreement, and then we put it in place, and then we create a deed rider. And no matter what, even if the project is rental or if it's sale, that deed rider gets appended to the deed, and I'm sorry, I apologize. it gets appended to the deed, and then that restriction runs forward again in perpetuity. So it becomes part of the, if you will, the title chain. So that's how it'll work, and I have done it, and we will get that accomplished. This is, since it isn't an age-restricted property, it won't be an issue at all with regard to getting that approved.
Thank you. Bill, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions?
I don't have a question. I have a brief statement. I think this plan is well-designed, meets all the engineering requirements. Personally, I think it's too dense. And if we had, let's say, a special permit authority over this land, which we don't, I would suggest a two-story building, more in common with what's in the town. But that's really not our purview here, because the current bylaw seems to allow density even higher than this. So I think our hands are pretty much tied. I'll have to vote in favor of this just because it does meet zoning requirements, but I'm not in favor of those zoning requirements. Let's put it that way. I think the zoning bylaw should be changed.
Laura?
I'm fine with it.
Is there any comments from the, we have to close the public, great.
There's an element that I needed to make mention of. As the public's aware, there was some question regarding the zoning bylaw. The town manager has contacted through our attorney or town council, the attorney general. The attorney general makes reviews of zoning bylaws. We were hoping to have a correspondence back from them by this meeting. However, I'll read to you a portion of the email that we've gotten from town council. It says that the Attorney General reviewed their files and determined that they had in fact been provided a copy of the information contained on the errata sheet, but the page was titled something else. They have told our town council that they had in their possession all of the information on hand when they approved the zoning change, and the zoning change was adopted properly. As you can see from the email below, the Assistant Attorney General has indicated they will be issuing a supplemental decision to clarify this, and have said that it will come this week, though I'm not holding my breath on that part. Once we have the supplemental decision, it will be provided to all parties with a supplemental decision coming. There is no need to have town council draft an opinion. Sincerely, Joe Dumelowitz. So,
Does that mean that we want to wait for this supplemental decision? Or
you know, it's been
that two ways,
approved
so I don't know
twice, so I see no reason for that.
I agree.
So do I.
Excuse me, can we say something I don't know what the procedural,
I was going to ask for comments from the public.
but before your vote, right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
before we close the public hearing. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Russ
I guess-
Danzer, and I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. I want to be certain that that you're going to provide 2 deed-restricted units on this project. Is that right? And deeded in perpetuity.
Yes,
Perfect. Thank you.
you're welcome.
As I understand it, there's a chance the whole project could be converted to 40B. I mean, it's not ruled out. Is that addressed to the attorney? Is there any reason why that's not possible? May not be economic. There may not be a developer who wants to do it, but there's.
I mean, it's possible, but it's not feasible. So my guess is it'll be 2 units, but they are included in the decision as being in perpetuity and will restrict the property. No matter what, there will definitely be 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's number 7 of the decision.
Okay. Sure.
Hi, Elaine Swenson, 6 Linden Street. So I received an email this afternoon at 1:30 from the AGO's office that says the AG's municipal law unit is still in the process of reviewing the situation. A decision is expected soon, but it has not been made yet.
That contradicts the
You're right, it does
email
contradict
that,
But this is directly from the AGO. So because it contradicts it, I really think that this should be, a vote should be delayed.
Anybody else got that email, or was that just to you?
It was to me because I reached out to them through Brad Hill's office.
Was it from, who was the email from?
Would you like it? Because I
please.
have the copy.
yeah,
Give it to Patrick,
let me
please.
see it. Thank you.
Brad Hill's office gave us a contact to work through in the AGO's office because this was a citizen complaint. And I reached out to them today after receiving your email through Martha to make sure, to see whether a decision had been made since we weren't contacted. And that's the response that I got. So it is still under review.
This is,
Patrick, what you read earlier came secondhand through several different people up from the AG's office. This is directly from them. I would think this supersedes it, as long as the timestamp is there.
I would,
You're saying ours supersedes it.
No.
I'm
that
saying
is
the
not
one that was presented to
one
us this
that
evening.
comes directly from the
Supersedes it.
AGO's office.
I haven't seen this. This individual hasn't been in contact with myself or the town. Evidently, they clearly were with Miss Swenson. But this is not something that has been made part of the discussion up until this point.
I also have a email from somebody in Representative Brad Hill's office to my husband giving us the information of the contact person, if you'd also like that.
Sure.
I would have thought it would
Need
be
a clean
more
version.
appropriate if the contact person had also copied Patrick on the email to you.
Well,
'Cause
I
it
mean,
do-
Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, we have an approved bylaw by the Attorney General.
Without a doubt, the bylaw was approved on April the 11th of 2017. That was done at that date. It hasn't changed since that date. The email that we received from town council, who had gotten the opinion from Kelly Gannigan, who is an assistant attorney general, was that they are simply reaffirming that it was done correctly and it is valid.
So at which point, if we deny it, the owner can appeal it
Yes.
based on the current bylaw that we would approve it against.
So it's a little confusing to me where you know that we have presented this and the AG office is reviewing it, why you would move ahead.
I think we should.
I don't think you should either.
I do think we should, because I have to question who the person is. This is a subordinate person. Patrick would have talked to an official person. Somebody else said something they didn't have the right to say. That's the way I
Don't
hear
have
this.
That's not true. The way the original inquiry went was that the town council, okay, asked the AG, and the AG then got back to, I don't know whether it was the town council or it was the town manager, who then forwarded something on to somebody else who got to you and said it looks like they were happy with what they did in 2017, but they'll issue a supplementary opinion in the next week. And I think on the safe side, we should wait for that supplementary opinion. It's only a week, we hope.
Joe?
I understand the abutters' protestations and desire to attempt to I guess, understand the bylaw, but it is absolutely clearly in place. It's penalizing the applicant to continue the process only because it is clear that Kelly Gannigan is the party who actually renders the decision. This actually went to the AG. The AG reviews. Within 60 days of that process, they send back a confirmation. It isn't as if this was like, oh, somebody didn't look at it a long time ago. It had been looked at. It had been approved, and the bylaw was basically effective.
But then what's their supplemental opinion going to be about?
Who knows what that even regards? And you may be talking to a secretary, you may be talking to an intern, you could be talking to somebody who's an unpaid volunteer, you could be talking, we have no idea who this person is, but we do know who Kelly Gannigan is. And we do know that our town council had communication, and this community's town council basically said, I'm not going to issue an opinion because I spoke to Kelly, and Kelly said, it's coming, we're ratifying, it's fine, we just have to do the formal writing. And I think this board probably is very familiar with the fact that it's municipal.
Okay, so your view is the supplemental thing that's coming is just a ratification of what they did in 2017?
That's the way I thought it was
Yeah,
worded.
it's clear that it really is a simple
But
ratification.
is there a need to proceed, I mean, can't we ratify at the next meeting?
Put it this way, if some insane event occurred, because there's no way that, I've reviewed the bylaw, there's no way it's not applicable, and there's no way it isn't enforced. So if something were to occur, then the decision, you don't have to do a thing. It's void because there isn't any bylaw to proceed under. If that were to happen, it would truly make it null and void on its face because there isn't an enabling provision. So holding back a vote, there's no reason. And the fact of the matter is, this has been brought up. It was brought up in September, it was brought up in October, it was brought up in November, and now here we are in December, and it's the same exact thing again. And the person who's been proactive has been Mr. Reffitt to seek opinion of counsel and to push the issue. And as a result of that, did have direct communication with the AG's office. And again, not to Mr. Boroff's point, not a subordinate, but an actual assistant attorney general, who is the person who reviews and makes those decisions. So it's pretty clear.
Okay, so just to clarify again, a legal point, so that if this supplementary decision were to in some way or reason invalidate the current bylaw, then our decision
Is null and void.
is null and void. Okay. I'm
That's
happy.
why there is absolutely no risk, none.
Thank you. Is this relative to the site plan or the site plan approval or the current bylaw?
It's the bylaw issue. Just
Well, I
first. Just a quick statement. Martha Driscoll, I appreciate what everybody's saying. I understand the timeline is very tight. But the thing is that when you look at what was the email that was said.
I need to cut you off because I don't want to sit here all night discussing the same object over and over and over again.
But there's two.
I think we're all in agreement that if the bylaw becomes void, the decision becomes void.
Okay.
So unless it's relative to the actual site plan and the current bylaw, I don't think this board needs to listen to any more testification about
Just 2
how you don't
points.
believe that the bylaw is
Not to
accurate.
rehash anything, but number one, if that does happen and the bylaw is rendered inadequate, wasn't done properly, and we do null and void the decision of the planning board, and we have to start all over again, what developer is ever going to put themselves in that hornet's nest to start this all over again? We delay a week and we get the decision. Why has it taken them 5 months to issue the decision? They've reviewed everything, and all of a sudden the surprise document comes up that isn't even the same document that apparently Town Hall sent them. So you have a document that has the same information, but it's not the same document that was presented at town meeting. They have to approve what was sent to town meeting, not something that had the same information. So there's a reason why the municipality department of the AG's office is still looking at this. I don't know what it is. None of us do. But I don't think delaying a week is going to, or whatever it takes, I mean, that's the problem. Why has it taken so long for them to issue an opinion? But I do think it's not going to look favorable upon Hamilton to issue a permit and then have to retract it because we didn't do our bylaw correctly. We keep this in-house, we do it right, we fix it if it needs to be fixed, and if it doesn't need to be fixed, we move forward. Apparently, they don't have a buyer yet. It's not like somebody's jumping down the bit to sit there and say, I want to start the site plan, I need to build today. We still have the condition to move on to your site plan issue.
Martha,
We
you're
s-
repeating.
Excuse me?
You're repeating. We need to move on.
Well, I'm moving on to
Please.
the site plan.
Okay.
We still don't have the traffic study,
Yes, we do.
the peer review one, but we don't have the one done by the police.
It's not relevant to the property itself.
I thought that the HDC agreed that they were gonna work with the town police to do a traffic study, and we're gonna issue a
For
permit.
for the whole overall
I
down.
thought-
Yes, that was a general comment about how the downtown needs a traffic study. I don't think it was a specific recommendation for this plan.
Okay, but so we're gonna have a traffic study done for this specific area that may reveal information that is gonna totally impede the ability for the town residents, businesses to perform. And then we're gonna have to step back and say, oh, we made another mistake, we're gonna have to refix. Why don't we be a little proactive, put the horse before the cart, and sit there and do things right, as opposed to always catching up? We're always catching up. We never sit there and say, let's be proactive, let's put a plan in place. I get it. I'm working with David. I'm sitting there, we're trying to get, this to go forward, make the development work, get the money from it, try to make the whole Winthrop School project get in place.
Martha, please.
Yeah, I think
You're repeating
I
yourself.
think it's insulting that you
Over and
say
over.
we're not being proactive, because we sit here every other Tuesday and look at the bylaws and try to adjust them what's best for the town. And every time we ask for public input, nobody shows up to any of the meetings, whether it's in their neighborhood or somebody else's. So I think that's very insulting to this board, who works very hard. As a volunteer board, even though we're elected, we don't receive a stipend, we're a volunteer board. So
I
please don't
apologize if I
insult
was
us.
insulting, but you have to understand where we're coming from. Doing a traffic study post-development is sort of retroactive. But thank you.
Patrick.
The town staff, including police department, fire department, myself, DPW director, possibly the town manager, will join with some members, some residents, as well as some business folks to work with a traffic engineering firm as well as a planning company entity that will be undertaking a parking study as well. So those joint efforts will take place, participant activities, and we want to have some residents as part of that effort as well. So it will absolutely be proactive. One of the things that I've learned is the fact that a lot of the signage in downtown has been erected over the last 40 years, sort of in a willy-nilly fashion. A fair amount of it was never even accepted or approved by the Board of Selectmen, which every city and town have, unless they have a specific traffic commission, the Board of Selectmen or the City Council, whichever the case might be, are the roadway commissioners for the town. So once this group that I'm referring to work through a process evaluating parking, evaluating traffic, and we come to a set of recommendations, that will go to the Board of Selectmen. It'll be a very public process. We want people involved, but make no mistake, it will be proactive and it will address the kinds of things that I fully expect it will make downtown a lot more functional and a lot more understood regarding how parking should work in downtown. So, I think that it will be very helpful to those that live there as well as those that work there as well.
Agree. Long past due.
Julia Maycock, 62 Willow Street. I would just urge the board again, to wait for the supplemental opinion from the Attorney General's office to vote on this site plan. Nonetheless, I do want to just reference something that Attorney Mann said earlier about the agreement about the preservation of Max property, and we certainly appreciate her being responsive to those concerns. It is a compromise, obviously. Until the HDC signs it, the abutters cannot sign the document, nor do I think people have actually had the opportunity to fully digest that document. But, so I don't think, I just want to clarify the record that the abutters haven't, until the HDC signs off and makes that, signs off on the contract, that we don't have the opportunity to do so. And again, I would ask you, just for the sake of, I don't know, the idea that the state might undo this, it seems to me that, and by the way, reasonable minds can disagree, and obviously we do. And so I would just ask you to hold off on your vote. I don't think 2 weeks is an inconvenience to a developer or anyone else. Also might give board members time to fully, read the document.
Hi, Rick Mitchell, president of the HDC. Just want to sort of reiterate what Patrick was referencing is the HDC has indicated it very much is in support of whatever we can do to help the parking and traffic in the downtown. The HDC has not taken a formal vote on what form that will take because there is no scope of services and no cost has been developed associated with that, but I anticipate the HDC will be contributing to that, as it should, because we were encouraging downtown development. We should be part of the solution. I would urge the board to proceed with voting on this. I think, there's no question what this bylaw passed muster 2 years ago. It's the Assistant Attorney General has indicated it has passed muster. And I think we ought to remember that this whole thing was created by one individual as an attempt to try and delay this project and throw this into question. But there's no evidence that it was done improperly or the bylaw hasn't met the scrutiny of town council and the Attorney General. So I would very much urge you to proceed with making a decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Rick, could I ask you a question? Is your calendar at the HDC such that you need to have a decision tonight as opposed to the first meeting in January?
We would like a decision as soon as possible so that we can go to bid.
I understand that, but
yeah.
I mean, do you have a advertising process, and so are you going ahead during the holidays, or?
We're in the process of creating an RFP. We had hoped to issue it. We'd hoped to have had a decision 2 weeks ago, but the board requested another 2 weeks to wait and hear from the Attorney General in terms of his or her opinion on the bylaw. That's been received from the Assistant Attorney General, so I see no reason for this board to delay yet again. There's no reason to believe that there's going to be any other information or that's going to change their first decision or their indication that the second time they've reviewed it that they've come up with anything different. There's no reason to delay other than to delay for no reason. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, and we've been at this for 5 months now.
I understand, and I appreciate that, and I'm very much ready to vote in favor of the HDC, but the question is, the whole public is up in arms.
No, the whole public is not up in arms. We have certain individuals who are trying to stop just let's face reality here is it's the last gasp in trying to stop this or delay this project. We have 5,400 voters in this community. We have about 20 people who are rightly concerned about this project. And we've done everything we can to meet with them, talk to them, listen to their concerns, address those concerns.
I understand all of that, but on the other hand, is it very important?
Yes, it is very important. We're spending public money to develop this project, and I see no reason to delay it any further. If there's a substantive reason, Peter, then we would be happy to delay it. But there's no substantive reason other than a speculation that there may be some other reason that's unknown to anybody in this room. So I just see no reason not to, and I'll just leave it at that.
Peter, I agree with Rick. Unless you can come up with something substantive, delaying it for a week, maybe let's delay for another week, and let's delay for another week. And we've heard the same information over and over again. So I don't get your.
Created by some emails that are in conflict.
Well, that not necessarily, Peter. So
Well,
let's let the next speaker
I'll
speak.
let Patrick evaluate that. He knows what he's received.
Town council has been in contact with the Assistant Attorney General, who was the individual who originally approved it. She has said that she approves it again. That's all I need to know.
All right, that's
Thank you,
fine.
Patrick.
It's fine with me.
Comment?
Swenson, 6 Linden Street. I had a couple of concerns with the drawings. The drainage flow on the permit site grading plan shows the flow of water, all of it coming down the driveway and from all points of the parking lot leading to this one location that's labeled as the snow pile or snow storage. And the combination of all the water that'll be shed from the building plus the entire paved site is localized along the abutting neighbors. And I'm concerned that there's going to be so much water concentration in that area that it will impact flooding of our basements.
Which drawing are you looking at, please?
I think probably this one.
It's probably a combination, but
The
the
back one,
permit
right.
site grading, if you look at all the elevation points,
Is that sheet 3?
sheet number 3 of 6,
Okay.
it's labeled permit site grading.
Yep. Okay.
Which one is it?
Yes.
Are you done with that, your comments, or
No,
you have other comments?
that was just one. I had a question about that. So on the landscape detail, permit landscaping plan, the quantities aren't listed. So it seems like it's a notional plan, but not actually a plan for a developer.
Okay.
And on the details, which I think is sheet number 6, you have a detail of a guardrail, but there's no detail of the 8-foot fence. So, I'd like to understand how these issues are gonna be addressed. Like, are the missing elements going to be filled in? Is the detail of the type of fence that's being proposed gonna be shown? Are the things that are proposed gonna be requirements and not proposed items? And how do we contend with the water flow towards my house?
Can you tell us again which one you're looking at? Wait,
3 of 6.
Sheet 3 of, but there's 2 packages, so it's,
I'm sorry, this is the Meridian Associates plan?
okay,
No, it's over there.
this one? Okay, thank you.
So your last question?
Was there also going to be the financial representative from the town? Weren't they going to be meeting with us prior to this meeting?
That's not relevant to the site plan.
Okay, so if I'm off the site plan, and so
But that's what we're approving tonight, is the site plan.
okay. So is it relevant to everything about tonight's meeting?
Yes, it's not, we're reviewing the site plan in conformance with our bylaw.
Okay,
So April, can I answer your
I
question?
just thought that you would have a knowledge of it, and while I
think that was
I
something
did-
talked about under another board.
Oh, was it?
It
Okay.
was the Board of Selectmen. Jill, would you like
So
April to?
why don't we respond before?
Yes.
Respond first so that we
Well,
have
no,
them?
he just made that comment. I'd
Well,
like
that's
to make
exactly-
my comment.
No,
Okay.
she's got to respond to the site plan comments.
So basically, with regard to landscaping, it isn't a construction plan, but they are shown where all the plants are. So that's why. It just isn't called out in numbers, but the landscape plan is very detailed. With regard to the fence, it is gonna be, originally we had left it, and we had a 6-foot fence, and we just didn't provide the detail. It's a stockade fence. There's not much detail to provide. It's an 8-foot stockade fence. It'll be, the materials will be thank you, AZAC. I couldn't find the words. It'll be an AZAC stockade fence. There really isn't much to show because it literally is just a boxy fence. And then with regard to the drainage, April's going to address it because I think that the drainage actually was reviewed by a peer reviewer and it did not flow in any direction that would be harmful, nor was it going to contribute to any flooding issues that are already there. But April will speak to that, just so that the board will have all that information.
Thank you.
April Farrar with Meridian. Which house is your house?
It's 6 Linden Street. I'm concerned for all the neighbors, so that the water collecting all in here, right, that all these homes.
Okay, all right, so it's not actually your house, you just had a question about how
Well,
the grading was on the
since
site.
my house
Sure.
is one of them, right? So
Is
my
that
house
this one?
is here.
Okay, that's you down here. Okay.
Right, but the point, it's really irrelevant of which of these homes is mine.
Sure, I was just looking to see the direction of where you were, that's all. So
Okay.
I could tailor my comment back to you.
But I want the comment tailored to the entire perimeter.
Sure, okay, that's fine. If I had a whiteboard, this would almost be easier, because I could scribble stuff on here for you, but basically how the drainage works is everything on the driveway, not even everything actually, the area from Willow Street, and actually if you have, the area from Willow Street down to where that first catch basin is, so if you actually want to pull up the plan, I'll actually
The board can
point
kind
to
of
you.
follow too, if you go from Willow, and then you
So
traverse
if you,
up,
you
basically
go down
back
here,
to
right?
property.
So from Willow all the way down here, this part of the driveway goes into that catch basin. And there's a curb along the entire driveway. So nothing is coming off the driveway onto the yard heading towards the abutter's property on Linden Street.
Elevation is higher here than here.
It's not.
The numbers indicate that they are.
So this is 54 and the 54.8, 54 and a half. Catch basin is actually at 54, 54.1. There's a 54 and a half here. So everything is going in this direction.
Okay.
This is the high point right here. This goes in this direction, that goes in that direction, that goes in that direction. And there's a curb along both sides of the driveway, and that prevents anything from the driveway actually getting off on this side. So any rain that gets here is just rain coming from the sky. There's no extra rain coming off the driveway heading towards the properties on Linden Street at all.
Thank you, April.
Do you want to know?
I understand.
Follow it?
And we also have a letter from Liz Olson at TEC that confirms that the drainage was done in accordance with all rules and regulations and.
Right, so that one piece goes to that catch basin, and then the other bit of the remaining driveway in the back, where the other spaces are in the carport, all that goes into a separate catch basin from, so there's two of them, catching, different portions of the driveway. And then the roof goes into, the infiltration basin, that's done through, drip edge along the side of the roof. So that doesn't actually go onto the driveway and off as well.
54.1.
Yep, that's the catch basin
This
elevation.
says 54.9.
Correct, that's higher.
Okay, right, so it's higher, so it's coming, you drew an arrow going that way, but this water's actually going this way.
It's not, because there's a catch basin right here, that's 54 and a half, right here. So this is actually going in this direction.
Okay.
Okay, and here is higher to 55.3 at the corner of this lot, and this goes in this direction. That goes like that. So the contours are kind of angled that way.
All right, thank you.
And in that direction there.
So I guess my concern is, I'm not claiming to be an engineer,
Sure.
but that my concern is that the flow of, in the wet seasons,
Mm-hmm.
the water flow coming down the driveway
Yep.
is gonna,
It doesn't
Overwhelm
actually
the curb.
leave, it's not gonna overwhelm the curb.
so that-
There's not gonna be a situation where the rainwater would come from this point on the driveway and overtop it, and overtop the curb. And run
my
into the
ear,
property.
right, yeah.
Not even here, this actually goes.
Okay.
Those go in that direction.
Okay.
So it all pitches down in a way from the river distances on that side.
Thank you, April.
Sure.
1 second while Peter uses the restroom.
Should I ask, so about
We-
the quantity of the landscaping? It's
The
not-
quantities
it's
are,
missing.
right, we don't, for a permitting plan, you don't have to count every single plant that you put on there.
Well,
If
that-
we were developing a construction plan, you would have that detail in terms of every single plant that's on, that you're proposed, that the contractor's gonna put in, is on here. The permitting plan doesn't require that, it doesn't require that exact level of detail, but it
Okay.
does require you to show what your intentions are, and these are all the intentions of what's gonna happen, and when they permit it, they're permitting
When they
this.
come in for a construction permit from
It looks
Patrick and the
like
building
that,
official,
and then they'll count up everything after that.
Patrick will approve the construction permit based against our permit tonight.
Right.
Or approval tonight if that happens.
Gotcha, okay.
And that will have more detail than what's shown on there.
Density,
Numbers of all the different plans that we would have to
Yeah,
buy.
okay. And I get your point about the stockade fence, I was realizing it's not stated.
Sure.
That it's that style of fence. and,
Sure, yep. Same reason.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure.
Let's give Peter a minute to come back. Are there any more comments relative to the site plan of this? What's the opinion of the board? Are you ready to close the public hearing at this point?
I am.
Yep.
Peter?
Yeah.
Laura?
Yes.
At this point, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I move that the public hearing on 5963 Willow Street be closed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Does anybody have any more conditions they'd like to discuss adding on to the? Or is the board ready to vote on the approval of this site plan? Application?
Yep.
Richard?
Okay, I move that the Hamilton Planning Board approve the site plan review done in accordance with section 10.6 of the Hamilton zoning bylaw at the property of 5963 Willow Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Let me just question, Pat, I mean, Jill, what you said was that if there is a change from the AG in some way, then this will invalidate the vote, but that seems silly to me. I'm willing to vote tonight, but I don't think we should have anything that gets invalidated.
I honestly think there's absolutely no risk of it being invalidated. Mr. Clark, I have reviewed it as well, and
Yeah.
I've been a land use lawyer for a very long time. I see no grounds for reversal.
Okay,
And the
so
AG, in
let's go ahead
fact,
with the
did
vote.
verify twice.
And if they did invalidate it, would the likelihood be that it's on a minor point of some kind that can easily be corrected by the HGC so that it could come back to us and then we could vote with the change?
I can't answer that question. I don't know, but I don't think there is absolutely any risk that they're not going to approve it.
Right, Patrick's checking his anyways.
Patrick, do you have anything to add?
You know, I don't know how many of you are football fans, but when you watch football, referees on the field uphold the decisions that they make on their original call. The Attorney General does the same thing. They're not going to overturn themselves.
Okay. Let's go forward.
So if
Thank
that's
you,
the
Pat.
case, we take a vote.
Sure.
Richard? Or is everybody in favor?
Aye.
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 So passes. Is that all? We done?
That is it.
They approved the formal decision? I didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah, we have to approve the formal decision.
Right.
Do you want to revise your motion, Richard, to approve?
What are the elements that need to be in it, please?
All you have to say is that in the form presented by Mr. Rucker.
Okay. I move that we approve the motion to approve the site plan review as proposed by Mr. Ruffert for 5963 Willow Street.
Thank you.
Okay, seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Not bad for my first time. It's gonna be my last time too.
Have a wonderful holiday,
Thank
everybody.
you too.
You too.
You too.
Take these home and trim it.
Inland?
Your son coming back from New York for Christmas?
He is coming back, he's actually coming home, on Thursday night because we're going skiing at Sunday River for the weekend. My husband's-
Okay.
Hopefully I don't break anything.
Never say that.
You know, I'm getting old, I'm not as,
Gee.
Think limber.
I love it. Take care, thank you, happy holidays.
Jesus.
Hey, Russ,
Good job.
is there any chance that your board would be interested in more units? I mean, there's so many one person units or couples, single bedrooms.
Sure.
Why don't we just move on and get 10 or 15 or something?
Right on Willow Street?
Yeah.
No, it is.
Well, we were going to have Andrew do it, and he walked. But now,
Maybe he'll come back and bid it
yeah,
with the RFP.
right.
Because there's no restriction.
Brian, you don't think that,
It
you
won't
don't
be
think the
because
economics,
it'd be family,
you don't think the economics are there on this site?
not for him.
40B has a lot of supply side subsidies
Yeah, I
for
know.
construction.
I know. But right, it wouldn't be for family housing.
Right, that's the
me get
problem.
That's all they're gonna approve right now, the state.
That's all the state's going to approve.
That's what he told you.
What's all, sorry, what was that?
The state will only approve
state wants
family housing,
family
and these are
housing.
too small
Right,
units.
they don't want,
Originally, he was gonna put senior there and do family at Long Meadow. But he had to have a family component. So
Or
a straight
screw up
senior isn't gonna
new
fly.
one.
Which
Or
is
it
one
would
of
take a
those,
while.
which is one of the
All right, two.
most important
You don't see that
aspects, right?
everywhere.
Or
What's
one
that?
of the senior housing. I mean, that's what they all
Well,
say. is-
here, it's an issue. I mean, obviously family is too, but yeah, it's more of an issue here than.
We don't have a shortage of senior housing in town.
Well, we have a shortage of senior affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I agree.
We have a lot of senior projects, and they're all being bought up by people who are not residents, so.
Right. Affordable senior housing.
Affordable, they're not necessarily affordable, right.
There's a whole article about
So,
Beverly the other day. and-
on to cluster,
Yeah.
or whatever's next.
Yeah, OSFPD.
I made a,
First of all, thank you, Dan, for refereeing everything over the last number of weeks on that review.
I'd say any
Appreciate
time,
it.
but that's the last time I've won.
Oh, I think you'd make a great replacement for this guy.
I took a copy of the OSFPD bylaw, and I made a number of comments to it, a bunch of strikeout areas. In your package, that is the full bylaw text, but I'll pass around to you the one where I did the strikeouts. I believe Rick had a number of comments in it too.
Well said, thank you.
I couldn't just let it go up there all night.
No, absolutely not.
I reviewed this. I thought it made a lot of sense.
You know, the kinds of things that were duplicative and sort of a sales job, and a lot of the text actually, you know, when I originally read it, I thought to myself, my goodness, here's 14 pages of God, Mother, and apple pie in a zoning bylaw, and it really doesn't need to be. And then I thought about, well, why would it have had that level of descriptors and prescriptors? And I thought, you know, this was a document that needed to have that level of detail to get public buy-in. So I'm hoping that we'll have some confidence coming from the public that we serve, and I think that a clean and direct bylaw is probably a good approach to take. As you'll recall, our consultants did suggest to us that we simplify this document, and the strikeouts in the other areas here are the kinds of things that I'm suggesting that we'll want to talk through and see what we want to do with it.
Right, I think we really only had one person even attempt to use this over the years, I believe, one or two maybe, that I remember. But I think, I mean, all of the duplicitous and that kind of unnecessary strikeouts that you've done aside, I think that's, you know, that's great. I think the main point here is how can we make this thing work and actually get used? And, you know, just from what I heard anyway over, you know, the previous developer a couple of years ago that was looking to use this was that there was no way he could make it work. That it wasn't, it just didn't allow for the density that would have been required. And it didn't allow for, I don't want to say multi-uses, but I guess in a way that's what it is. And I'm not talking about commercial, but you know, he was looking to do potentially different things on the same site, whether it was, cluster cottage, it might have been some single family, and it might have also been some senior housing, or it was some combination of those residential uses. But the bylaw didn't really, at least at the time, allow for that. And I thought that was an interesting idea at the time. Something that we don't really have in town in terms of allowing, numerous residential type uses on one property. So, I think that's kind of where I'd like to kind of start, is the basic idea of this, and is it what we want? Is it what the town wants? And then get into some of the more, issues around density and, dwelling units per lot in the various districts and so forth. So, I think it's just the basic premise, what do we really want?
Patrick, can I answer? Oh,
Jump in, just even back up, and Peter, you and I are the only people on this board
Lived long enough?
that were around when we created this bylaw. And and I'm not bragging. What I want to do is give some context to what that original bylaw was. As you see, it was said Open Space and Farmland Preservation Development Bylaw.
Yeah.
Well, as Patrick referenced, it was actually the first bylaw that we developed after the master plan,
right.
in 2004. And so this was, what was being proposed was a recommendation of, from that master plan, and was endorsed by a wide group of, there were already 70 people that were involved in development of that master plan. But this was a radical departure in development for this town. And there was a lot of pushback from people who were concerned that this first bylaw was going to cause us, a lot of development that was not wanted, and there was a real fear that things were going to get out of control. But it was fashioned with the concern that people wanted land preserved, and they were concerned that subdivisions in and of themselves were going to eat up a lot of land and be a real inefficient form of development. So that's why the basic premise of this is you're allowed density bonus, but you have to preserve 50% or more of a designated lot. So this is actually a land preservation approach to housing development. Because at that time, there was a real pushback. Subdivisions, it was like highways in the 1960s. They were being built all over the place. And it was a real pushback against subdivisions just chewing up a lot of land, 1 or 2 acres for a house. And it was just eating up land resources and unnecessarily consuming what little land we have left. Because as you remember from the master plan, there's 85% of our land in Hamilton is either permanently protected or under some kind of land restriction. So that was sort of the genesis behind this, right, Peter?
Yes, and it was, the idea was you did a standard subdivision, you found out what it would produce, and then there are incentives to cluster, which was increased density, and that was the two-step process. Really,
I think you hit Freudian slip.
yeah, right, I can't say it backwards now. But anyway, that was the problem. The selectmen insisted on it.
Yeah, and I think this is something we're going to have to grapple here with, because at the time it was like, not only were people concerned about the development, they wanted to preserve land, so they thought this was a good approach, but they were also concerned about the density. And there was also concern about restricting developers' rights to build subdivisions. So one of the key questions that we're going to have to address in this, beyond the density, is this a bylaw that we want to make mandatory. In other words,
That was the original idea, yes.
the original idea was to no more subdivisions
Yeah.
on large pieces of land of over 10 acres. That this would be the preferred model going forward under a special permit. Now, remember, a special permit is discretionary by this planning board. The planning board does not have to grant this. So it's a very, what's the word I want? It's a very intense process. The last special permit that we approved, I think, was Patton Ridge, and before that was Canterbrook. Canterbrook took 5 years, and we went through.
Yeah, but that's because it was all tied up in,
No.
I mean, it's just like
There were
a
various,
huge.
there were various reasons.
There were various reasons,
Right.
but it was withdrawn, and then it was reapplied. So it's a long and intensive process that a developer is going to recognize that they're at a real risk, even proposing this. So it's not like what just happened. It's not a by right. It's a special permit. So it's.
I think you'll have a hard time getting this through town meeting if you make it mandatory. If you say we're getting rid of single-family development, which is kind of the backbone of
That's
a lot
not
of this
what-
town.
That's not what I'm saying. If you listen to what I'm saying, I said on large pieces of property.
Right.
For
No,
example.
I understand that, but if you make it mandatory on those,
Well, let me finish.
I think you're
So
putting the
so-
approval of this at risk at town meeting.
You may be right, but before we, I'm just trying to get the underpinnings here before we get into the politics. So, it's not excluding it from smaller pieces of land. For example, what Tom Ford did across the street, was it 3 units?
The two units across from the bank, you mean?
Yeah, from a small subdivision. It wouldn't prevent, something under 5 acres, you could do potentially 5 houses. But the idea was for large plots of land. And I think this is very important now, Bill, because the rich property, Route 22, is in play again. It's been in play for 2 years. And it was under agreement with Toll Brothers for a large, very large subdivision of mega mansions. But the owner consistently has wanted more money than any developer can pay for that land. But he's still looking to sell that land and build residential housing. He's looked at 40B. The 40B wouldn't work because he wanted so much money. So we need to think of what's happening in our town now and how this might apply. The same is true at Gordon Theological Seminary. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody that that institution is in serious financial condition. They've already sold off 20 acres for some sort of development. They're in negotiation.
It hasn't been sold yet.
Well, they subdivided it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. They haven't had any, they've had only one taker.
Yeah, my misspeaking. They set it aside and they hope to sell it. They're now talking about selling 2 dorms for affordable housing, potentially. The rest of the property, my guess is, and with a couple of years, is going to be up for, or some big portion of it is going to be up for potential development. And the only thing it can be now is residential. It's not zoned commercial. So we ought to be thinking long-term about what it is we want this town to look like and what form that housing will take. You're right. It could be a big, tough sell to say this is mandatory. Okay, maybe we don't make it mandatory, but then.
You could also make it mandatory by scale, so it's not mandatory for, let's just say 10 to 20 acres or 25 acres, but for really big estates where you could just pepper the countryside with houses, then it is mandatory.
Or
It's
we could
you can.
or we could say the incentives are such that it would be their first thing that they wanted to look at.
That's what I'm thinking.
And not make it mandatory. Just say, this is so attractive, why would I build a subdivision? So I just wanted to sort of have that background as we get into the nitty-gritty is, what is it that we want to have happen and in what form that should happen? Does that, Peter, does that reflect sort of where we originally started?
I think so. I won't change any of your words.
Okay.
So I have a. I think this was not quite drafted the way Patrick wanted, so I need to get him back in the room. I think it's self-defeating the way it's written, but there's a little quirk.
Are we confusing it with the state overlay districts?
No. Patrick, some technical questions on this. So base maximum density is what's in the zoning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by right, it's 1.2 times base maximum zoning. Then you go over to 121, and it says for every 10% increase in open space above 50%, okay, you can increase by 10 percentage points the density above base maximum. You're already at 1.2. So what happens, this takes you back to 1, because it's not on top of 1.2. It's in place of 1.2. So you need to change the wording. What you really want is if somebody goes from, say, 50 to 60%, you want their allowed density to go from 1.2 to 1.3, right?
Let me make a suggestion.
Because it's not, the way this is written is you're allowing it to go from 1 to 1.1. You understand the difference?
This is the existing bylaw.
Yeah.
What?
This is the existing bylaw. It isn't something I
This copy and
I
see all the
wrote.
attachments.
Have you got this copy?
No, that's my copy. It's over there. This- it has all
He
his
didn't
comments.
he didn't add anything.
Oh,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
main body of it.
Yeah.
That's why.
It,
Oh, well, okay. I thought we were-
but your point that I think is useful is that there's some voodoo math here that it would be
No,
useful.
your version still has the same glitch.
Yeah,
In
it-
120, in,
The original
That's why
version.
it's highlighted it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
well, so the original, that has a glitch in it, okay?
We need to clarify and frankly, think of it in practical terms. We need to make sure that building commissioners and inspectors can fully understand how this math works. And as it is written right now, we need to pull this out. We need to come to the density that, number one, is easily followed, and number two, to the point that we're trying to get to is what is the density that we want it to be?
Well, technically, we want no density in all open space, according to the original objectives, okay? So
No.
you have to
You
think
know,
of it
it
that,
was-
that way. What, you go back to the original incentive. What's the most density we can tolerate in order to get, large amounts of open space?
To me, this bylaw was very careful and explicit about focusing on maintaining open space and making it publicly available. That's the real premium that comes out of this. And that's what we want to continue to build on. That's what makes Hamilton unique and a rare community. And we want to build on. I think that's, one of the major things that people here really value about what this bylaw has the ability to do. In my opinion, the way to do that is to allow for density in pocketed areas with cluster development in a way that works with topography, but saves larger amounts of land, particularly those amounts of land that, are wetlands, are significant, are connective to other open space where there are trails and other things that people really value. And each and every property is going to be unique relative to how it connects to other properties and makes open space amenity. And that's the value of the special permit process. But we really need to get to the density and the type of development approach that, we think can fit on property here in a way that's meaningful and has the ability to allow developers to recognize this is worth doing.
They need a bonus.
Well, yeah, the bonus is
And it
the,
can't be just
No,
building less roads.
bonus in it.
there was originally a bonus, but it's tiny. It's 20,
Right.
20%.
Yeah, it's
For every
20%.
10. For every 10, it's 2 extra units.
Right.
right.
It needs to be.
And then there's,
5.
the thing that has the kicker
Well,
is that if you increase the share of open space by 10 percentage points, you get to increase the share of density by some amount.
Right.
You get to increase the density by some
Well,
amount.
yeah, it's kind of like in senior housing where we've got a criteria list of, various things that a developer could do, and they would get X amount of bonus for that.
Right.
Right.
The carrot is the extra open space, you get extra density.
Right, and you add elderly, or housing for elderly persons. Gets you a bonus as well.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think we need that. At this point, any elderly housing on here is not going to be affordable. You're going to take one of these big estates, you're going to build very nice housing. It's not going to, it's going to look,
You're equating elderly with affordable.
no, I'm not. I'm saying the senior housing that would come out of a big development like this would not be affordable. It would be,
Yeah, but elderly,
I think
you're
that's up to the
equating
developer.
elderly.
But I know what you're saying, right? I mean, there's.
right, it's going to look like
But,
a nice.
Right, I
kind
think it's either, it's affordable, it's
Right.
market,
And the point,
it's senior.
but the point is,
It-
affordable housing is growing by leaps and bounds around town. Every development proposal, not affordable, senior unaffordable housing is all the rage these days. Okay, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. In Wenham, it's 1.2 million
1.4.
for,
1.4.
for, clustered townhouse, attached townhouse density. And they're actually selling like hotcakes, but they're selling to people who are coming out of Boston because they don't like urban living, according to the Canterbrook developer. That was the most interesting thing I heard.
Or are the ones in Wenham selling?
Yeah.
Are they?
All of his sales have been to ex-Bostonites.
Well, no, I'm talking about Canterbrook, yes.
Canterbrook, yeah.
Canterbrook. I don't know about Wenham.
Right, I don't know either.
Where is the?
Wenham Pines, the old golf course.
Oh, that's.
For 28 units or whatever.
Yeah, it's a big
So,
development.
so we may just eliminate.
I'm just saying, there seems to be so much of this development occurring right now, and our senior housing boom is going to be gone in 10 years.
Well, the other thing is, A, we didn't have the senior housing bylaw when this was written.
So,
B, we didn't have the
that's a good point.
inclusionary housing.
Maybe it's
bylaw.
redundant with that,
So
right?
it's really redundant.
Or a
Okay,
state overlay
okay.
district.
Okay, that's a very good point.
So, so I'm wondering if the best way to do this is take a theoretical piece of property, like 10 acres or 20 acres, you pick a size, and then just start applying this to a theoretical piece of property and then sort of strategically.
The real properties that are in danger in this town are not 10 acres. They're 50 or 200 acres.
Well, that's even
And that's
better.
really, I mean, that's a tougher nut. That's a real,
Well, actually.
you
it's
build a
not
whole little
tougher
town on one of those things, on one of those parcels. What?
So, but right now, so the option is 40B on that, let's take the 60 acres at
Take Meadowbrook.
the
Yeah.
rich property.
Yeah.
It's either a subdivision or senior housing, or, right,
Or 40B.
or 40B.
And so what's the density zone? So there must be only half acre there?
I think it's half, isn't it?
Half?
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's half.
This map's too small. I think it's the
That's going to look a lot like the housing that's already surrounding it.
district, isn't it?
Sort of, 70s subdivision, quarter acre, half acre, half acre.
I can't read this map.
Well, the advantage of a large piece of property like that is you can have a whole lot of open space and put a pretty large.
Complex.
I'm gonna use the word project or development, number of units on it at the same time. So I can see
Is it over
that
here?
being, given the price tag of the
That
property,
property?
being much
I don't know.
more doable for
I wonder if
a
it's
developer.
this property.
Gordon Conwell's the real tough nut.
Maybe it's this, no? Anyway,
That could be,
anyway.
That's Rich's.
Huge, beautiful thing if you did it
Okay.
right.
right.
So that's in the
should be a
R1B,
disaster.
that's the R1B, so it's
You get a
one.
lot of water from that
it's-
hill right now.
So the Rich property, just for example, is in the R1B, that's 1 acre. So I don't know what the topography is there, but let's pretend half of it's developable. So you could get 30 houses, you know. Or
It's wet.
one very large senior housing development. You know, it can't be over, our senior housing bylaw has a limit on the number of units, I can't remember. It's a total limit, I think there's a total limit of 150, but I
Well-
don't think it limits a project size. But anyway, it would be a huge project. And so would a 40B. So.
Okay, so I mean, this is good. We have to debate. Clearly, the density issues need
That's gonna be the
refinement,
key.
right?
That's
And
gonna
the
be
other
the
thing I
key.
think it really needs refinement is the question of whether the senior section is redundant.
Say again?
The
Whether
senior
the
section.
senior
I mean.
section is redundant.
Oh, yeah, we could take that out. I think the key thing for this bylaw is gonna be density. Just like every bylaw,
Right.
right? So what do you think of the idea of taking a theoretical 10-acre lot, which is what this now applies to, and just say, okay, let's apply a new density that we think might be reasonable. Let's see what that comes up with. And we can then sort of game it and say, hey, that looks really, we don't think that's appropriate, that's too much, or that's not gonna be enough. And then I would suggest then seeing if we can get a Tom Ford or.
Right, that's what if you really want to know whether to make this work, you need to invite Tom or two other people into a session
Right.
and say,
Right.
how much do we have to give you before this actually starts to look interesting?
Right, because he wanted to do, Esdale was gonna be 14 units of 1 acre. I think,
family, yeah.
14, yeah.
14 houses.
Single-family houses up there. We asked him to look at this. I'm not sure how closely. He did look at it, but we asked him about it. He came in and said, it won't work for me. So, yes, it's a good idea, is once we come up with something we think might make sense, maybe we have two options, one kind of conservative.
Actually, Esdale, how many acres were there? 14, 13?
Well, he was going to develop 14, I don't know, and he was gonna.
1 acre, he
was
was-
gonna maintain the central house.
Right, you're gonna carve it up, two
So,
units.
I don't know how many acres there are.
I apologize, but I'm going to be excused.
So, maybe we should come in and take that specific example, because he ran all the numbers.
Rick, what did he say? Did he ever say why it wouldn't work for him?
Right.
Couldn't make him up enough money,
Well, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Why?
enough density.
Not enough density.
Density, okay.
And and again, he wanted, his one idea was to do a number of different types of housing on that property. Not just one cluster development or whatever. He wanted to do 2 or 3 different things there. This was Tom. Yes. Right, you remember
So there's nothing in here that wouldn't encourage that. You don't have to do all of one thing.
Well,
You get a density bonus, and how you want to use it is a little bit up to you.
I don't think it really allowed it, though. He wanted to do, I forget what all it was now. Single, cluster, cottage, and senior. I don't remember how it all worked, or what he wanted to do, but it was.
Looking for several entry points is basically what he's looking at, right?
Right.
For what?
You want to make, I mean, it's common knowledge that the developments of the 60s, 70s, and 80s destroyed any kind of community because they made these big subdivisions that were just houses that only a certain class of people or certain socioeconomical type of person can afford. So,
Right.
So it was a uniform development.
He'd be,
So you're thinking diversity of housing type?
Well, Tom had a bunch of 1 acres,
best way to go.
and then he had the estate house.
When's our next
Well,
meeting?
that was his final plan, or well, the one he wanted to do, the one he could make work was
I don't think
14
we meet
single
until
family.
next year.
Right, and then
No,
we had.
correct. January 7th.
Well, part of the
Okay,
problem is, too,
Merry
that was a
Christmas.
pretty expensive piece of land.
Thank you again.
That was a very expensive piece of land. They wanted like, what, 6 million, 5 million? Yeah.
You know, there's another wrinkle of this, just, I'll put out there for people to think about. It presumes that the open space is effectively given to the town to presumably the Conservation Commission. I think that it needs to remain in private ownership. I think, and I would propose that we create a set of standards by which that open space is maintained by the private ownership in
No,
time.
you don't want to
The
get into
idea was
that.
to create public access
Well,
to the open
I
space.
get that, and that's
What you
what
can-
we
what you
want to,
can do
let
is
me
you can have the
finish,
land
Bill.
conserved.
Let me finish, Bill.
Okay.
The town is in a position where it has these expectations of people that DPW is going to go to Boardman and wherever else. There are these, created public open spaces that we have no ability to maintain. It's impossible for a shrinking DPW operation to have the ability to deal with the open space
that's
that
a
this
totally
language
just-
expects us to do.
Concern, totally justified concern. It's the reason the state doesn't want any more state parks. They want to take land and they want to have it conserved by trusts and foundations and so on, because the state doesn't want to have a huge army of people out there maintaining things. And I think the best way is probably just to have the ownership remains private, but the land is conserved. So the development rights are sold for $1 to Greenbelt,
or something
who
like that.
maintains it. There's a set of conditions, they maintain it. And then there's also a succession provision, so if for some reason Greenbelt goes belly up, then it goes to another organization. And technically, the title is still that of the property owners, a collective group in the middle, so to speak. But they've lost the development rights.
Right. I just want to take the responsibility off of the town for having to deal with it in perpetuity,
Well, that's
which
what
is
all
how
the-
some of them have.
Conservation restriction lands, which are all
Yeah,
over
that-
the
and
town.
see-
Right, which is
like
great,
that.
but that's not what this.
No, I agree. And you don't want to give it to the people that buy the houses in the cluster unit, because then you get into small-scale politics. 51% of those people will want to cut down the trees, the other 49 won't. It's how do you decide what you want to do with this land?
Yeah, and then it's liability too, if they privately own it.
If you're
and you're
property
allowing
owners,
other
I'm going to have to,
public-
that's
yeah,
right. If you can conserve it to one or another land trust,
Yeah.
that's the easy way. You technically still own it.
Okay, so how do we proceed with this? Because it's,
I think they start off by talking with the developer.
well, I'd like to give them something to be able to chew on.
Give them this.
Why don't you?
Why doesn't it work?
There's
Well-
been some ideas brought up here. Why don't
Tom could be a
you
Yeah, right.
go through and edit that document to read the way the suggestions have said?
Okay, people okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we need to have somebody come in, whether it's Tom or someone else, but I mean, Tom's at least familiar with it, and had comments on it
I
previously.
wonder if is it Ed Smith? Canterbrook?
Larry.
Larry. I wonder if it's not his, well, he might actually look at this, because Larry Smith is
Canterbrook.
the developer of Canterbrook.
Yeah.
I'm happy to ask him to give a
So-
critical look.
Let's just say, I mean, he just handed us a check for $217,000. So, and I know, and he mentioned to me he's going to start looking at rich property. So, and I said to him, well, and he's looking at over age 55, because that's the only thing that's going to give him the density to make money. I said, well, you might want to,
wait.
Right. I said, you might want to, we're working on something that potentially could, give you another option.
What's the density bonus in the senior law?
I think it's up to 4.
It's 4.
Isn't it?
I think it's at
4
least-
times the allowed?
4 times base.
4 times base.
Yeah. So, we probably can't exceed that, but I just thought, hey, he would be the kind of guy that could read this and go, clickety-click, how is this gonna work for me? Same with Tom Ford, and if you know anybody else, that's great too. So what I'm hearing is take this in its edited proposed version, put it out to the market, have come back and say, good, bad, change, whatever. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
You could-
for
you
me,
could
yeah.
talk to Mark Johnson, who farmed out for the Rich property. Was it not Rich's? What do you call it? Peary. For the Peary property, he had 2 or 3 different developers would do clusters. And they weren't necessarily dependent on our cluster bylaw as such, but he talked to those kinds of developers on the North Shore. He probably has 3 or 4 names of people that had responded to him for the Pearies.
So the general.
Yeah, the original thing was a cluster with a big common stable and barn, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
As opposed to individual.
He had 2 clusters, actually.
Yeah, there's a number of
There were
things,
2
yeah.
pods that he was gonna
Yep.
go for.
Yep.
Okay, well, I mean, it might be a good thing to do over the holidays, is clean it up, send it out, and see if we can get some,
Yeah,
Yeah.
make sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
The bubbler.
Can we
Why
I
take,
thought it was.
Is that coffee or is it
the
rain?
bubbler?
It's the bubbler bubbling.
Okay.
yep, I haven't really digested, Patrick, what you handed us tonight, but that was just taking the old bylaw and condensing and getting rid of certain parts?
Yeah, it was taking out a number of areas that I thought were just too verbose
The other thing
and
is,
didn't need to be.
It got rid of the requirement that you had to take and do a
Gotta
subdivision.
do a yield plan first.
Yeah. And then, it was this yield plan, and then you had to come back with a new plan
Yeah.
on top of that. It was like, what?
Yeah, no developer's gonna do that.
I mean,
But
the only, I mean, a simple yield plan, you almost have to do to determine the density.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
would.
to determine value, too.
Right, exactly.
I mean, but that's not, but this required that you actually
Yeah, no,
do
right,
it and
right.
bring it to
Yeah,
us
yeah,
and
yeah.
prove that you've done it.
Right.
Before you could either do it, or I've done it, but I'm not doing I'm doing a subdivision.
Right.
Right.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Okay. Sounds good.
I
Moving.
think the old attempt was based on something like Mass Audubon, but some organization was trying to create incentives for clustering. And I think it was Mass Audubon. We got something that Judy brought us, and we passed it around, and then we dicked around, and it got awful. It got worse.
Well, and again, I think it was, it was the first one, and,
Yeah.
people, honestly, the board had never written a kind of that complex a bylaw, and, various people were, and I think Tom Ford was among, people we talked to, and he was like, this, you can't make me do this, I won't do this, it has to be optional. It got real watered down and very confusing. So, anyway, all right, so we have a path forward?
Yeah, I think so.
On a related matter, I got an email today from Marcy. She and Susanna Colorito Mansfield have offered to discuss with the planning board the Great Estates bylaw and whether or not the board would like to consider it for revision as well.
When did we do that last? And got shot down?
I think we did that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We did.
And it didn't get to the point of becoming a submission because it got trounced pretty heavily.
What's the difference between it and what we're looking at?
It's dealing with the existing buildings on, a lot of the
19 great
properties
estates.
where you have these trophy estates that, the presumption is that the town wants to see those being used and maintained over time.
As opposed to being adaptively reused?
Well, no, they can be adaptively reused. That was the whole point. It was, keeping.
This sort of accomplishes
keeping,
that.
There were, 18 or 19 of those properties had to meet a certain criteria of age and size, house size and property size. And the idea was to, have condos or apartments or whatever in the old house. And then you could potentially add, once you've
Commercial.
done that, you could potentially add, I think, through another permit.
Isn't that what this does?
No.
No.
Because it doesn't deal with the old house.
Doesn't
But
talk
we
about
could
that.
invite Marcy Ricker to come, because she knows
Well, why don't we
all of
combine those two?
estates.
The purpose of the Great Estates Law was essentially still clustering, adaptive reuse, and open space, right?
Well, it was really focused on reuse of the
Painting-
building,
painting the
and,
manor.
and it gets very detailed. I'd suggest reading it, just so you have some familiarity with it. It's really, and if I remember correctly, the original building had to be preserved to historic standards. Do I remember?
No, well,
There were-
It got a bonus if
Yeah,
it
we
did.
got a
did,
bonus
yes.
if
So
it
it's
did.
really about preservation of the
Structure.
structure and maintaining its integrity and some limited uses in doing so. And then if you did that first of that original structure, then you could come back for a second bite at the apple and do some commercial.
right, you could add commercial
Yeah,
space.
had
Right.
to
But
add
that's-
commercial.
That's the biolabs model.
Yeah, it was sort of
That,
like.
that was the issue with it, right? At the time, we didn't want more residences, but now that seems to be
It's more appropriate.
what would be more appropriate. Yeah.
So, take a look at it.
And the fact that there were two parts to it just didn't, no one wanted to do it.
Oh, it's the Great Estates Overlay District,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 9.4, Bill.
yeah.
Go to your bylaw.
I don't have it today.
Not now, when you go home,
So,
go to your zoning bylaw, it's number 9.4. It says Estate Overlay District EOD, or also called the Great Estates.
And there's your homework.
Yes.
So,
yeah, if I remember correctly, whatever it was, a year or two ago, we proposed that we do change it from instead of Part A and Part B, it could all be done in one special permit, and the party could, did we do residential, or was it still commercial? I don't remember what we
We
proposed.
tried to integrate more residential, thinking that it would give some energy to that redevelopment, and people really shot it down.
Right.
So, do you know why Susan wants to come back? Was she willing to look at other options?
The email came from Marcy,
Okay.
and, I assume, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they're objective and open to listening to what we've heard through our process of evaluating where we're at with the consultants, which is we need to open up our zoning some.
So do they, either of them have property that would be applicable to what they are supposedly thinking about? I mean,
Susanna would, yeah.
Dana would, yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's, because when we first did the bylaw, we had a bunch of the property owners.
We have a list, I have a list.
Yeah,
of
right, it's 18 or 19.
17
Yeah.
properties?
Yeah, but that's several of those have been developed since then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're down to maybe 14 or something like that.
Okay. But the issue wasn't with them, it was with the abutters of those properties, right? At least the second town, or second
It's
vote on it
always the
was.
abutters.
It's always, right, it is always the abutters, but, they were the ones that were against the commercial piece, which, okay, I kinda get. I mean, I think when we thought of it, the commercial piece was, like some kind of a retreat or spa or, a number of things like that. It wasn't, barber shop and.
It's like Penguin Hall turned into.
Yeah, it could have been
turned
something
into
like
a
that
school.
too. Well, but that would be by right anyway.
Wasn't there one on Essex Street that was being considered, and then people came in and say, well, we bought this property here, and you're gonna put the driveway there, and that driveway is gonna be, it was about 2 years ago.
Oh, that was affordable housing though at
Yeah.
Was it gonna be
13
affordable?
Essex. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, certainly something to at least talk to them about.
Sure.
Are you gonna do something more, Patrick, to streamline this and send it around, or are we just gonna work off of that?
Why don't I clean this up, pull out the parts that I've, suggested to pull out. There are a number of items where I think that we need to talk through issues. I'll leave those there with the comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I think we need to just kind of highlight the areas that involve density and so forth, just so people are
Yeah.
focused
Right,
on
'cause
that.
there are
And
gonna
even
be, there are gonna be two or three key issues that just drive this.
Right.
And it's,
Right.
number one is density.
yeah, and uses. And,
That's the only way the developer can make money.
yeah, and also open space, how you classify that, if it's
Right, the other thing was, can you use,
wetlands.
wetlands as open
Part of the
space?
open space, right?
I'm of the opinion that we should.
Yeah, or at least a reasonably good percentage of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we should factor that in because it is a contribution to the public, in my opinion.
If it's really wet, like the Miles River Valley, you can't do much with it.
But
But it-
the fact that it's being protected and in public use, even if it's only for vision and for scenic value,
Well, it's got
To
a lot
me,
of
it's
wildlife
still-
value too, because
exactly.
the water, especially if it's wetlands, it'll bring insects bring birds.
But
Birds do all kinds of things.
But the point, I mean,
Bigger birds.
the river's a different story, but a typical wetland you can't build within 50 feet of anyway, right? So
Or
you at
at
least,
least 100, yeah.
well, no, you can build within 100, but, counting at least that portion you
Some
can't
portion
build
of it.
in, right, and that rest of it as, public benefit or the open space. I think it makes sense. The river's a little bit different story in terms of where you can build to, but, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. Okay, we move on to the housing production plan. We just have to vote to finalize that, and we're good to go with it.
Yep.
Well, as you know, we were gonna do this with the Board of Selectmen, not too long ago, and then we realized we could just vote on it each individually. So I think if we're all okay with it, we should just do that. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the planning board vote to approve the housing production plan document as discussed previously in a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Was there a date on that final document? Do you know? I guess we can just say
We met,
final.
on the 18th.
Yeah, I was just thinking on the actual plan itself, but,
We'll just say the final plan.
yeah,
All right.
that's fine.
So I make a motion that we, planning board, vote to approve the final version of the housing production plan document as discussed in a joint meeting with with the Board of Selectmen on November 18th, 2019.
Is there a
Second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? Hmm?
I say that's pigeonholing.
We've got,
We have,
it's from the 18th, November 18th.
yep,
the joint
this
meeting.
was the joint
Yep.
meeting.
That was a joint.
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of November 18th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Is there anything else in terms of updates or?
I have minutes from the December the 3rd, if you're up to that.
You just sent these out, right?
Yes.
Oh, since most of these are related to the, no,
Willow Street.
site plan review. I didn't read those.
Thank you.
And the other on the modification of the special permit was, yeah, I did peruse these, they look fine.
You want us to read these to vote now, is that the idea?
I mean, have you not seen them? I mean, we can wait.
Sure.
We can wait.
Wait till next year.
Yeah.
That's right.
You really want to wait a year?
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can wait. Anything else?
Also, I had, right after number 4, I'd had a full year of proposed meeting dates using our typical first and third Tuesday of every month.
Yep.
Which is not cast in concrete, right, Patrick?
We can
No.
modify as, you
Go
know,
along.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there's always something that creeps in there, some.
Does anyone have a problem with Tuesday nights? I don't.
No, I mean, it's
Okay.
the way it's always been.
Should ask.
No worse than any other, I guess.
Or better.
That's the spirit, huh?
Tuesday, it's programmed into my biological.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
like exactly.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
go to
Programmed-
town hall.
It's programmed into my wife too, so it's
I think it's
okay.
in mine, too.
You know, I'm generally fine with
I'm
this.
sorry, where is that?
Right after
At the
number
end.
4. Yep.
They're already there.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Are
Yeah,
you
no.
allowing us to take any vacation time, or?
Why do you have December 15th and then want to discuss the 17th, Patrick, please?
December 17th is today,
Consider that.
meaning we'll discuss.
Yeah, we'll
this
discuss. We'll
today.
discuss it
That's
today.
tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do, okay, thank you. Oh,
Dawn shines on Marblehead.
oh, no, no.
That's light
The-
dawns on Marblehead.
Nothing gets in, very little gets
Something
in.
like that.
Walked into that one.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, in the summer, if we don't have anything pressing, we've taken.
Right.
Had one
We
meeting
can
a month.
cancel it.
Yeah.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah. It would. It just depends. Or we say, we could do it now and say, look, we have one meeting in July and one meeting in August. I mean, we could do that. We have the power.
You have the power.
We have the power.
But we can make that call later.
Yeah, why don't we?
We'll see.
As
where we're at.
needed.
Yeah.
We should wait and see how active the season is.
Yeah, right. Okay.
All
Motion
right,
to
very
adjourn?
good.
Second? We adjourn.
You can make a motion to.
I make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.